Welcome to Contemplating the Universe. This is our first webcast, and tonight we have Cosima Lukashevich. She's our guest for this evening. She's going to be speaking about art as a doorway to other dimensions. And let's just see if Cosima is on the line. Hi, Cosima.
Hi, Leslie.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Great to be here tonight. Thank you.
So Cosima is a woman who's lived the union of cultural roots on 3 continents, including German parents that immigrated to America in her early childhood, incorporating modern Egyptian life through marriage and motherhood that led her to live in Egypt for the past 15 years. During most of that, she's been on her own studying, absorbing, and reintegrating her ancient European family roots that are rich in the creative arts to her present home soil of Egypt. She has exhibited and attended workshops in the Middle East and in Europe, Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, Germany, France, Switzerland, Lithuania, and Ireland, and offers private and group classes while she continues to develop pieces large and small by commission, as well as her numerous series of works on paper and also paintings on canvas. She is currently writing her own story, the story of her art and the lively experience on the creative path of self-expression. It is her hope to assist many more to open their natural channel of expression in the visual arts of drawing and painting. And tonight you're going to see a lot of Cosima's work, and also it's on her website, which is lukashevich.com, and I'll give you that information at the end. Enjoy the experience, both visual and auditory. And you'll be able to contact Cosima through her website if you wish to do that. And as I said, I'll give you those contacts at the end of the show. I've known Cosima for quite a while. I think her artwork is amazing, and so I'd like to share it with you. And we'll do that tonight. So let's just begin with a question. I didn't really say this, but you actually have an academic background in the arts. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and studying for in the art field?
Yeah, I went to art school, Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. It's part of Temple University, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Art degree from that school, and then. Later on, I attended the New York Academy of Design. At that time, it was called the New York Academy of Design. It's very near the Guggenheim Museum, just around the corner, and it's a studio school for artists. And that I studied painting and drawing very seriously there. So yeah, that's my education as
your
my
academic background.
My academic background as an artist. Yeah, that's right.
And what was your relationship to art as a child before you actually started studying it?
Yeah. Well, the story goes in my family that was something that I did, way early in childhood, and there were many people in our family tree that were in the arts, were visual artists and designers and craftsmen, and that's something that I did naturally. And really, to go back in my memory and think, who was I? Where did I begin as a child? That there was this connection to a sense of spirituality in creativity, in making things. It felt like that was where something mystical and magical was happening. Although I had no formal language to express that, it was just a sense. It was a knowing within. So that was a great playground to be in, and I felt nurtured there, and something magical was happening whenever I was in that mode of making something or drawing a picture. It was just an internal knowing.
And then what happened when you did have a formal education? How did it change then? Therein began the confusion. It was, okay, this is something I want to pursue. This is something I want to study. They should have the answers. And, it took years of processing all the information of what happened in university, which was this focus and intense experience with so many different media, from glass blowing, drawing, painting, metalsmithing, modeling in clay. So many things are there for the person to explore. But the underlying question still remained, well, where does this all come from? Where is the source? How do I access this primal underground source of creativity? And art school couldn't answer that question. And I didn't even have the language to form the question even. And I was embarrassed, even to pose that question, since, well, you're the artist, you're the one that came to us, you should just have this, you should have this in your back pocket. We're just showing you the media, and how to use them. So what do you mean you have this? Where does it come from? You should know this, There was both a confusion and an embarrassment about even posing the question. So there's so much thrown at you, and then that's what made it confusing for me. Nothing made sense. I knew that this all had to be connected, but what was it? What held all of these different media together? And there were you
no
weren't
answers.
finding that. You weren't finding
Right.
that at university.
Right, and it was embarrassing because this was something I was feeling inside of myself. I was knowing it, but I was so, you're here because you're an artist, so you should know what you're doing on that level. So I
it was mainly a frustrating experience for you.
Yeah.
And do you feel like it shut you down? I mean, or were you gaining something? Were you gaining skills, or it was more having the opposite effect on you?
Well, it's like this smorgasbord of processes and materials, and I felt like I wasn't an artist, really. Yeah, it was just...
It wasn't opening you up,
No.
In other words.
No. And you're left on your own. Go out, get an idea, spear it, drag it back, and then we'll critique it. And so life, it was up to the artist, to the individual, to find their own way. But of course, look, this is a university, an institute of higher learning for the logical mind. And what I know at this point in my life is that the arts, creativity, is about the divine and the source. It's a spiritual life. This is the source of the creativity.
So how is art a dimensional doorway?
I have come across the writings of Graham Hancock, particularly in his book Supernatural, where he talks about the very ancient artwork from the caves in Spain and France, Lascaux, Perlmèche, Chavot caves, which go back 30,000 years. And he thinks that this artwork was created as a portal to other dimensions. And in this book, he says that the hieroglyphs on Egyptian temple walls and other temple illustrations, other temple walls, are extensions of this origin, of this art being a portal. And this was, I read this and it was like, bingo, that's it, that's right. Because art is more than just a decoration or a pretty picture, or there is a spiritual function of the arts that in today's Western material culture we have lost sight of. We have diminished and denuded the real power and function of the arts.
So perhaps they're showing us through illustrations other dimensions so that we might actually be able to recognize those things. If we've encountered them somewhere in our lives, I'm sure a lot of people have extraordinary experiences that they don't remember or they don't process just because they don't make sense to them. So perhaps this is like a catalyst that evokes some kind of memory deep within us.
To view the artwork, yes. That's right. I think it's great that Graham Hancock, that he had this revelation, and then, he writes about it, and then it triggers like my memory, my knowing of what art truly is, its real function, and its power. We're cutting off the power of art to be a transformational doorway in our Western material culture. We're not seeing it for its potential, which is transformative. To be the creative person that's bringing it through, and also to be the witness. I mean, obviously, in those caves, to go down underground in this cave, that artwork was created so that people would have the experience of the power of art. To read this through his books and to recognize art's true function, its true power, and to go through the process of painting, I had this incredible experience. I have a few slides here. After graduating from university in Philadelphia, I had a project I had to do, and I needed a backdrop for it. And I had this very large canvas, and I said, I know, I'm going to do a Jackson Pollock. And I got my canvas out on the street and the cans of house paint, and I said, okay, now I'm going to do my Jackson Pollock. And it was innocent. And I started doing what Jackson did, throwing the paint, moving around the canvas clockwise, counterclockwise, and throwing the paint with the paintbrush. And what a powerful thing this was. One enters into this trance-like state. You're just in this. You're in this stream of pure. It's not even. It is expression, but it's this energy of creation, and it is incredible to feel the power of that. It made such an impression on me, but I didn't understand the majesty of being in arts, in the creative process, to stand, kind of hip deep in the creative energy, as he did, making his artwork. The paintings that are thrown without the intention of making a foreground or background or any representational delineation. It was not representational art. So it was just the pure creative moving through him. And so I reenacted that process innocently, not understanding what I was doing. And I got a full download of what the creative doorway is. And that informed my artwork later on when I came to Egypt. I'm showing now this, to do this interview, I found this, what I'm showing now on the screen, a quote by Jackson Pollock. And at the end he says, when you're painting out of the unconscious, figures are bound to emerge. And so, fast forward years of my life and coming to Egypt, I was, in a particular emotional state, forced to, where I could not think another thought. I was in this circumstance emotionally where all I could do was to be an artist, to paint. I knew that was the way that would heal me and get me through that phase. I've talked to you many times about it, Leslie, and what a transformative experience that was to be in that personal situation. Interesting how life takes you down a pathway so that you learn what you need to learn. And so I started literally pouring paint onto flat canvases and not expecting. I did it innocently. The first time I did it, to my surprise, an image appeared, which was exactly what was going on internally. To my shock, to my awe and shock.
And that was the first time you'd made that connection?
Yes. Yes.
You'd seen yourself manifested on the canvas?
Yeah, yes, I'm going to show it. I'm going to show this is the first one. This picture is now at least, 12 years old. And this is pretty much the paint poured on the canvas and with just a few adjustments of line and color here and there.
Why don't you tell the story of doing it? You told me this story, and I actually wrote an article about it. But it's a nice story of how, tell it from beginning to end, sort of, because I think it's a very nice illustration.
Well, I ordered stretchers from my woodmaker and had canvas, and it's a process of stretching, nailing the canvas down, and I had a number of them. It was late at night, it was getting late, I was getting tired, and this voice in my head said, just, pour some paint on the canvas, just make a puddle, and you will have made a painting. Ha ha, you will have felt as though you accomplished something, so just do it. And so I did. I poured this paint and then went to bed, and in the morning the paint was dry, and I lifted it up and put it, okay, let's look at it. There was an image, to my really surprise. So, really surprising. So that was an intimation of how to proceed. It has to come from beyond your logical mind, and it has to come through you. And so how the element of the unknown, of the loss of control. So for me, that is pouring the paint, where one doesn't have a clue as to.
Well, you're tapping into the unconscious instead of doing it as a conscious expression. So why don't you just also tell the story of how you came to Egypt and what that's been for you?
Well, I fell in love and married, and my son was born in America. My husband was Egyptian. And then years after being married in America, the idea came, let's go to Egypt. And at first I was reluctant. And so then we came, and after a number of years here, there was a divorce, and custody of my son became an issue. It was not an easy time in the least bit. So, it's been about 10, 12 years now that in the meantime, I knew that Egypt was the place where I would put myself back together.
And the picture you showed us, the one where you pour the canvas, that's after your divorce. That's
directly afterwards.
Okay.
That's immediately afterwards. So I'm in this maelstrom of, this tornado. The world is flying apart. Very painful, very hard time.
Did you do any artwork here before that?
Yes, I did, but it changed where I could make this deep connection only on occasion. This opened the doorways. Do you know what I mean?
You took the descent.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And Egypt has been instructive in so many ways. I have a few slides. Let me show you the stories of Egypt, the ancient stories of Egypt, the artwork in the Egyptian Museum, particularly from the oldest rooms. And I'm showing here a sculpture from the oldest dynasties that we have in the Egyptian Museum. And there are a few objects like this one that they're amazing. To me, they're...
How big is that, by the way?
That's like 3 feet tall. And this is supposed to be a general. And here's another one. This is the scribe Mitri, and it's carved wood, gessoed, with colors on top of that, with inlaid eyes, stone and copper eyes. This one, let me find the other one here. Okay, here's a close-up of this one. And
that's
you can see
the one that's 3 feet tall, the whole piece, yeah?
And he's supposed to be a general. There's another one. There's another one of a scribe, another portrait. And these objects they are emanating this life force. They're alive. And this one too, this is a Tanis mask, a gold mask. And they touch me. To me, they're alive. And that's the essence of being a creator and an artist, is to be involved in making art that lives.
But don't you think this is true? I mean, just in general, as art's role in culture, in ancient culture, it was something very much connected to the spiritual, whereas in modern culture,
that's right. Yeah,
it isn't. It's kind of devoid of, at least as a philosophy. I mean, obviously, many artists are connected to spirit, but hopefully all of them are. But I mean, culturally, I think it isn't, and that's probably why it isn't something that's valued and really taught in schools. Where in ancient cultures, it really was. It was co-creation and a way to bring the divine into form. So I think that's a huge. For me, that is one of the things about Egypt, is that it is all around you. You know, you're living in the middle of these pieces, these temples and such that are still connected to spirit, that you can feel that emanating. So it is very moving. For my own work, I'm not a visual artist, but definitely you can feel this, and it is a muse, I think.
Yes, that's right. These that I'm showing now are from a series based on the Tanis mask, the gold mask that I've just shown.
And when did you do these? I mean, just give us a perspective as to how things fall into line here.
This is, I think, 2007, this series, I believe, although I think this one may have come a little bit later. And here, have I shown this one? So, I have a few shots here of my studio, things that have some views of the studio, so you get to see some of the materials. You know, working in the paint, then that led to okay, if this is the way to work, then let me try this with paper, with collage, with the calligraphy of Egypt, with the graphic designs of Egypt, with the papers that I'm finding in Egypt. Here you can see a few of the papers and the calligraphy.
And what
on the
about
wall.
Egypt as far as techniques? Like, are there techniques you
Yeah.
learned here that maybe you didn't learn?
And here, when I arrived in Egypt, I took some workshops with other from Egyptian artists, and I learned to do silkscreen, which is a big thing here in Egypt. Egyptians love silkscreen and they love collage. My contemporaries were using these processes.
So this
avidly.
is silkscreen of calligraphy that you're showing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And what I did, I was involved in an exhibition from the Alexandria Library when it opened. It was called Imagining the Book. And so I made a poem in English, and I had it translated into Arabic, and I was working with a professional calligrapher, and from his calligraphy, I made this, what you see that I'm holding in my hand. This is his calligraphy of my poem. And so I use these designs a lot in my work.
And what do you do with them?
Here you can see like these paintings that you see on the wall and the pieces of furniture on the bottom there. I'm silk screening different types of paper with these patterns and images, and then I'm tearing them into pieces, and I'm letting them fall on the canvas, and I'm gluing them down wherever they fall.
So you do the silk screening, and then you do collage with the
that's right.
pieces. Okay.
Yeah. And I began, here I'm going to show you, this one is on a piece of furniture, and I had intended, okay, this is just going to be an abstraction, I'm just going to, cover this thing with paper, and living with this piece, and I started noticing on the right-hand side of the piece, I started seeing that it was more than an abstraction, and it turned into this. I could see the Sphinx, I could see pyramids and an Arabian dancing horse. So it's a type of seeing. It's called scrying or scrying. This is what the piece ended up looking like. So there's this type of vision that I learned.
You start with random things, and then you just see what you can pull out of it, Seemingly random things.
Seemingly random, and it's a rather mysterious process and so surprising. So it's surprising to me. I'm the artist. How did this really so in tune and so meaningful an image come, just flow out? There are things that happen that I never could have done with my logical mind, and they're really gifts to me.
Well, this is co-creation, just allowing the divine to move you, and in your case, it's your hands and your eyes that are your tools, and the divine uses those tools in order to manifest something beautiful. But show some more of your calligraphy, your collage, because I think... Okay, let's see here.
I
don't think a lot of times, it's not easy. You may have shown these before, but probably people didn't realize that was actually collage and how. And so here you have a shisha in the middle.
Yeah, a shisha and a fanus, the Ramadan lantern, and this is using an antique fabric that is embedded with silver wires. The dancers,
So this is actually fabric. It's not paper?
Well, there is paper underneath, and then what you see is silver is actually silver, and it becomes transparent. You see what's underneath it, and So Egypt, this series of the collage, it was, okay, Egypt, speak through me, like, come on, speak through me. I even had a studio in which I had to build a room divider, and I stretched this heavy cotton canvas across this open like doorway to create a temporary wall. And I was living on the 22nd floor of this building, and the winds would come blowing through, the dust, the very famous Cairo dust. I would watch this wall like breathe with the air moving through it, and I thought, if only you could talk, what story would you tell? So when I moved out of there, I took the canvas down, I washed it, and I stretched them, and I did my thing where, okay, let's have things fall into place. And a rather surprising, let me see, I'm trying to find the exact slide here. An anubis appeared, something that I was not planning on. What a surprise, This dog appeared, looking directly at the viewer, and he's sitting in the streets of Cairo, and so Egypt really did start to speak. I got what I asked for, delightfully so. And so, as well as with this one, this is a sphinx. I saw the sphinx and the woman sleeping on his side in the mix of the pattern. And that really is a reward as an artist. I think of it as art as being a doorway that opens, in the common day world, and these other energies are able to walk into this dimension with, through the art. I mean, I take down the painting off the wall or the collage off the wall, and the room is somehow different. And it's the same. It's the same thing with music or performance. There is
it's giving off an energy itself, so it will make the room vibrate at a different frequency if it's there or it's not there. That's right. So it's a doorway into those other dimensions, and I'm beginning to think that this is a way of affecting the future as well. That this is a way of drawing the future towards us. And what I'm reading these days about the mythology of Egypt is that the Egyptians were using these ancient stories to illustrate to them where they could use their imagination to build a future, privately, internally, individually, and for the society. I think whenever you're tapping into these archetypes, you're tapping into another realm, the unconscious and the collective unconscious, and you're tapping into another realm, which are all those energies, those vibrating frequencies, the unfolding. Yeah. Speaking of unfolding, you have a rose. Yes, this is a funny one. I didn't plan on making a foot. I didn't have the idea, okay, I'm going to make a foot. I found the foot in the chaos and the rose as well. And then, this thing is hanging in my studio, and I'm thinking a rose coming out of the toes. And then I started writing down the words, all these rhyming words, rose of toes, the pharaoh's nose, and I have a poem that goes with it. And
in the chaos. I mean, if you look into the rows, I can make out people's faces. I can see noses smelling the rose in the pattern. I don't know whether you're able to see it, but that's what I discerned, and I started working on this one on a computer program to draw forth these images to make them more pronounced. So it's a funny thing, you know, the rose is holding up a mirror and saying, this is what it is to be me, to have people's noses stuck in me. So it's such a rewarding thing as an artist, you know. I do these things, I release my control, and they start talking back to me. They have things to say to me, and so the creative act just keeps rolling.
Does it seem to be intensifying as you go along? I mean, is this process getting easier or more interesting, or did you have trouble surrendering to it in the beginning? And I mean, the story that you tell of sort of being cracked open, I think when dramatic things happen, it does cause a shift, and that lowers our resistance probably, so that we allow it in. But now, you know, there could still be resistance after that. Has this gotten easier for you? Is time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes and no. I reach points where, you know, there are low points where I have to reprogram myself, you know, all over again. Okay, you're always starting from the beginning.
That can be exciting.
Yeah.
New beginnings, beginner's mind.
Yeah. It was a very difficult summer this past summer with all the events that were happening here in Egypt. Somehow it was not a particularly productive time as far as making paintings. There were other things that I'm beginning to do. I'm interested in making animations and using my artwork as the basis of those animations, but it's kind of moving in other directions. Yeah.
But that's part of the creative process, I think, is to continue to grow and to bloom and hopefully continue to expand or open new doors. So that makes sense that you would be moving into new. And also, I think the period of time that we're in, with everything changing, technology changing, we're changing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have different things available to us that we didn't have before, and why not? Why not use these new technologies or these, to express. In the end, it's about bringing something through. So I think whatever tools you have, whatever medium you can use, and it's curious to keep trying new things and to...
Yeah, it keeps it fresh.
I just want to talk a little bit about spirit drawings and how you kind of evolved into spirit drawings. I mean, a lot of this has just been you sort of randomly, or thinking that you're doing something random, putting something down, and then, as you said, seeing what's actually coming out of it, and then using your skill to highlight that and to let other people see what it is that you're seeing in this painting. But you also do something called spirit drawings, which seems to be a completely different process. Maybe you can explain what they are and talk a little bit about how you do that and what that is.
Yeah, I don't have any spirit drawings represented here in this folder for this talk. Spirit drawing, so I don't have any illustrations really to show you except my own, which was and you've seen it, the very dark red purple piece of the couple. And the reason I don't show drawings is that they're personal. They're done for other people. So I'm doing these drawings for an individual, and we come together, we meditate. I'm setting an intention that there will be an image that comes forth in the drawing that I'm about to start that will aid and benefit this person for their highest good, for their betterment, for their clear vision, for their deeper perceptions of whatever they are moving through in their lives. And I work with pastels, and I begin making automatic marks with whatever color my hand falls on. So images will appear in the matrix of the colors, the marks. I will have an idea come, a flash of something, and I'll go after creating that. But often I'm looking at what's happening on the paper, and there are images coming forth, and so it tells a story about that person.
So you're basically tapping into somebody else's journey.
Yes, yeah. But I think what happens is that that person and we're creating a field, a mutual field, and to some extent, it's coming through me. It's a message from Spirit through me. There is some kind of merger there going on. I notice that there are relevant things to my life going on in there sometimes in that drawing.
But generally, we resonate. When you're doing healing, you're usually resonating with the other person, and that's why they're attracted to you in that particular moment. So I think that's you're somehow, you are resonating and tapping it, because probably you wouldn't be able to create an image that was completely foreign to you. You would have no understanding of how to even create that image. So
yeah. So, and I for myself, I know that I need a method of self-reflection. To know where you are on your path in your life. I go to the mirror to see, okay, are my eyes clear? Is my hair shiny? Do I have bags under my eyes? What do I look like today? What's my health? Who am I? In a way. And it's the same process in the drawing. This is a way of seeing our interior selves. And we're asking Spirit to make comment about our situation. We're opening it up. It's the same dynamic as choosing a card in a pack, in a deck of cards, or a rune, or throwing dice. It's the same. That's what I would say in what I'm trying to say about my artwork as a whole. It's this releasing the executing power of decision-making that was so ingrained, or this was highlighted in the education process. One was taught, okay, you make the decisions. This is the way to execute this painting, for example. Do you know what I mean?
So the direction of movement is different. Like what you're taught is probably moving from form to recreating form, and in this case, it's intention that is creating form, as opposed to you intentionally just recreating a form or copying a form that you're already seeing in front of you. So it's moving more from intention, I think, right? Or communication.
It's mysterious. It feels like swimming rather than walking on solid ground, is the way I would describe. It's a sensation too. It's like you lose control to find your true self. Do you know what I'm saying?
Surrender.
Yeah. It's surrender and allowing something more than you to speak.
So this dissolution of ego, or this surrender, or basically getting out of your own way, is a big part of the process to opening these doors. Yeah,
and this quote, "getting out of your own way," this is a term. This phrase was used a lot in art school. I mean, they were saying it back then when I was studying. Get out of your own way. But they didn't say that was meaningless in a way. It's like, well, what does that mean? I don't get that, you know.
Yeah, because they're telling you to get out of your own way, but at the same time they're telling you to control what you're doing.
Exactly.
So, you know, you need grades, or you need to accomplish something or finish something or whatever. So, yeah, you can get out of your own way as long as you're moving in a very specific direction, I suppose.
That's right. That's right. Fascinating. You know, it's been a fascinating journey so far, being an artist, you know. Thinking that an art school was going to teach me how to do it, when it was really the school of life that I got an education in. Yeah. Well,
I mean, speaking to other artists, how important do you think life experience is, as opposed to institutions or some kind of formal learning? What does one bring and what does the other bring?
But I think in today's world, this interest in and this recognition in spiritual, in the world of spirit, and how we are connected to it, is even beyond life experience. Yeah, it is life experience, but there's something even beyond, you know, a higher dimension of that is spirit coming forth. And life is a teacher of that.
Do you feel you can teach somebody that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times, to me, life experience is often this falling on your face or taking the descent where you encounter that. Whereas theoretically, yes, you should probably be able to teach somebody that. But for me, the problem with teaching is that it isn't experiential, in the sense that if there's not feeling related to it, I'm not sure that you're going to have a shift. Whereas when you do fall on your face, that's probably your greatest teacher. And
that's right. Yeah.
And what about this quote, losing yourself to find yourself? How do you feel that plays into your life? I mean, you've said that your first kind of big shift was that descent that you went into, but what does that really mean to you?
I think it was a process of breaking down the walls of your former self. I recognize now that giving birth, that was the first step, to give birth to a child. That something happened then too. It opened something out. It cracked something open that had not been nudged before that. And then this descent that I talk about in having these experiences in Egypt, it's a crushing of your former fortress, so that something expands in you, so that you can grow beyond those boundaries and limitations. It's necessary.
Well, probably our opinion of ourselves or our perception of ourselves is very limited. I mean, I think that in general, it's created through our lives, probably from our parents and what we learned in school, and it's not. I think it's very limited, and maybe finding the depth of what you are, expanding into it, or realizing that you are more than you thought you were. I think people have very low expectations. My impression. That people, they do. I mean, that's always a problem for me. I always feel like people can expand more than they have. They don't know where the edges are. They could expand more but they don't even know that. So I think that that's one of those things that the descent does for you, is shows you that the bottom isn't where you thought it was, and the sides aren't where you thought they were, and the ceiling isn't where you thought it was either, and that those limitations are set up by probably something arbitrary that you were programmed into. So it does. It takes courage to do that, and sometimes I think life has to force us into it, which I think is a big part of Egypt. You know, people who come here, Egypt is the land of transformation. The energy here is really powerful, and you do get slapped in the face a lot. But in a good way. I mean, that you come up against yourself, you come up against, it's densely populated, so there's always somebody else that you're coming up against. And I always say this, that it teaches you to flow like the River Nile, because if you think you're in control, you're just going to drown. So to me, Egypt is a teacher, because it is challenging you all the time with just energetically, if not in a very mundane, practical way.
And I think there's something, yes, I agree with you, and there's a magic here. There's a magic here. There's things happen here
that can't possibly happen anywhere else.
No,
Yeah, I agree.
That magical realm is
living. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's vibrant. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a quote here that I have on my studio wall, and I love this quote from Rollo May. What if art and imagination are not the frosting on the cake at all, but the fountainhead of human experience? I think the ancient Egyptians, everything that they did involved their imagination and art as an equal partner to the practical and material building of their society, of themselves personally, and this the fountainhead of human experience. This birthplace where the fountain becomes, it is individuated from the mass, the main of the water main. This is the crux of the fountain. And if we go to that place in art and imagination in ourselves, we have the opportunity at that point to heal, to grow from, to evolve out of. I think the ancient land of Egypt had a respect for the art, well, of course, for the arts and imagination, but they employed it. They used it. And,
I think it wasn't separate from themselves. For me, human beings are here to create. That seems to me the highest expression, whether it's artwork or creating another human being is a pretty amazing thing to do. So it's this whole process of creation, and in one form or another, because we have the ability to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your artwork is very beautiful, so I think this is a really nice way to
Thank
be experienced. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this first experience with me and sharing your artwork with everybody else.
It's been an honor, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
So let me just give you a couple pieces of information here. This is Cosima's website. She does spirit drawings as well for those people who are in Egypt. And she will be in the U.S. in January and February of 2014. You can contact her through her website. And also she does have prints, a lot of the pictures that she showed this evening. She has prints that are available on ImageKind, which make wonderful gifts. And she's also on Facebook as Cosima Lukashevich Artist. So you can visit Cosima at all of those different places. And as I said, she's in Cairo at the moment. And if anyone wants a spirit drawing, you can contact her through her website. She will be in the U.S. in January and February. If you're in the U.S. and interested in connecting with her there, you can contact her also through the website. Okay. Well, thank you, Cosima. Have a good evening or a good morning for those of you who are on this side of the world. And I hope to hear from you all, and I hope you'll join us again. Thank you.